That's good.
All right. Welcome everybody to the first public teaching for gardeners and growers in English. We'll be having this every second and fourth Sunday of the month, and we'll just see how it goes in terms of the popularity. So what I'd like to do is to hand you over to Lisa, who will begin with the presentation. Thank you.
We are inviting everybody to the weekly agriculture teaching workshops. The private teachings are open to any farmers and people who are in the agriculture business. So we'd like any of them to please participate. And there is no fee for this. You just need to get security checked. So we invite applicants, please. And also the SSI education program is only €100 a year, and we'd love to have you come and join, because there's huge amounts of wonderful information in there for people to really get their teeth into. And if you really want to know how plasma works, you really have to be a student. Also, I must say that the books have been invaluable to us, and if you don't have the books, you really can't understand everything. So we suggest that everybody really needs to buy the books so that they can understand how plasma really works. Okay, so this is how our teaching format is going to work. We're first going to start with a theoretical teaching on specific concepts. That will take up part of the lesson, and we'll then go back through the slide presentation and open for questions and discussions. So we ask that you all listen to the presentation with no interruptions first, and then we'll go back and make sure everybody understands everything. Then we'll present practical applications in uses of the plasma, and we'll open that for questions and discussions. And after that, we will have an open forum for feedback, contributions, and other ideas from the group. We hope to use that as a format for every teaching. So the topic outlines for this course are going to be an overview of how plants fit into the plasma world, seeds and field interactions, plasma rays, the seeds of life, creation of matter, water, which is a carrier of the fields, Cohan, amino acids, which are the building block of life, our soil biology, which is as important as the plants, the plasma way, how the plants actually work in terms of things like photosynthesis, how plants absorb fields, and those are just a few of the topics we'll begin with. And as we progress through the months, we hope we find more and more topics, because as we learn, we will be sharing the knowledge with you. Sometimes maybe we won't get it completely right the first time, but hopefully we'll learn together and put all the puzzle pieces together amongst ourselves. Okay, so we're going to start the workshop now. And the objectives of our teaching are you here to learn how to grow large and abundant produce, and so you can have more to eat? This aspect will only be a byproduct of our teachings. The objectives of the teachings are as follows. Through the plants and their environment, we will learn about how plasma operates in living creatures. All of these processes can teach us how the universe works. We really have come to understand that to observe nature is how we will understand the plasma. The field interactions between all of these things create the super fields in which we live. And understanding this will allow us to create the environments for all living things that support and nurture us all. All of these processes can be shown to work similarly in all creations and will teach us about totality. So all our agriculture teachings will be able to be utilized for things like health, things like the environment, and even in space. If we understand the creatures, we'll be able to understand other things too. So the unseen fields, this is where it all begins. The vertical people are intelligent and have emotions and a soul. We'll get into that later once everybody really understands the plasma, because that might just freak everyone out when we start with that at the beginning. But we need to connect to the plants on all of these levels to affect significant change within the plants and within the environment around us. Once we understand and connect to the plants, we will in time learn to grow with love and care, and only take what we need and thank them for their contribution. Eventually, over time, we'll be using the knowledge to restore the planet, and that is our ultimate goal. Once we connect on our soul level with the vertical people, we will not be eating them at all. Our journey of learning will also help us to connect with the beings that share our planet, and will teach us how to connect with all other life in the universe. Plasma science is the science of unraveling complicated natural processes and understanding the processes in simple terms. The beauty of creation is revealed for us to understand and utilize for the benefit of all. Okay, so now we start agriculture today, and this is the sad part of it. Our scientists treat the plants and soils as a chemical process. They look at how each element affects the plant and what it does mechanically. So if we feed it magnesium, it takes away the yellowing in the leaves, for example. We've been taught that fertilizer, what fertilizer to use and what chemical to spray and what bugs to kill. Nobody understands why the more chemicals you spray, the more you need to use, and the more bugs you try to kill, how even more appear. The focus in agriculture today is all about the yield, which means, how much can we grow and how the farmer can produce the biggest amount of crop. So it has nothing to do about the well-being of the plant, the nutritional value of the plant, how the fertilizers are destroying the biology of the soil, because as we know, the more fertilizers you use, the more you need to use, because you've killed everything else in the soil around it. And so by doing that, you constantly need to use more chemicals to even get your things to grow at the end of it. And the overall impact on our environment, how things like fertilizers get washed into rivers, flow down into the sea and cause algae blooms and kill off coral reefs, just like is happening in Australia today. So our current understanding of plants, soils, and fertilizer is about to change forever, and we've only been told half of the story. So today we're going to deal with 3 concepts, and this is concept 1, the vertical people. Plants are also known as vertical people because they grow up, they reach tall, and they do not walk around in a horizontal axis like people or animals do. So they are sentient beings and have a physical structure, emotions, and a soul. Many experiments have been done around the world that show how plants react to our thoughts and actions, but this has always been labeled woo-woo science, and we can connect to plants using our emotional level. And when we've connected to our plants, we find that it's like a knowing. So you will just know what your plants need when you start connecting to them. So we're going to show a little clip about plant intelligence, and we couldn't figure out how to get the sound to work well, so you're going to just watch, but please actually just watch, because you need to understand what the plants are doing, and all you need to do is watch it and you'll see. Here we go.
Oh.
Sorry, we'll start again. Okay, so from that video, we can actually see that the plants compete with each other. They sense where the pole is, they reach, and when one reaches it, the other concedes defeat and tries to look for somewhere else to go because they know that they can't compete for the same light. We've discovered this with our lettuces as well. If you put too many seeds in a small area, then all the lettuces grow small, not because there isn't enough nutrition. There is. It's the fact that they all decide, okay, we'll stay small so that we don't impinge on the other one's space, so they can all grow happily together. So they seem to do it in tandem and work together. So if we look at the universe, we can see that everything is magnetical and gravitational fields. And this is a representation of the universe and how the toroidal fields work in the universe. We all know it's the same for the person, and we've all seen a picture like this of a torus field, but it's exactly the same for the plant too. The plant takes in and puts out gravitational and magnetical fields, and it anchors itself in the earth and gains gravitational fields from the earth, and reaches and strives for the sky so that it can get magnetical fields from the sky too. And this is how the interaction of the plants work. So I'm going to hand you over to Jimmy. So he's going to do concept 2.
All right. So the second concept is quite a new one for those that have not involved with plants for a long time, in that our traditional view on plants is that we have to throw chemical fertilizers because they need to absorb the matter in terms of the fertilizer. But essentially what the plants are doing is they are only absorbing the fields from the soil and from the environment. So it's a totally new way of looking at how plants feed themselves. As we've seen with the pictures there, plants have a magnetical and gravitational field. When you look at each plant species, they have different leaves, different shapes of the leaves, the arrangement of those leaves on the branches, the size of the plant, its overall shape. These all produce different maggrav fields. An example of that is when we grow some carrots or beetroots in the ground, they're very hard because of the stronger gravitational fields in the ground. Whereas when you see and pick some fruit hanging on the trees, the fruit is much softer because of the magnetical fields are much stronger the further away we get from the ground. So to illustrate that, we have a look at these pictures here, and we've got pictures of plants growing from the ground cover to tiny little shrubs, bigger shrubs, and the tall trees. So at each level above the ground, we have different magnetical and gravitational fields which the plants are using. This also explains why when you go into a natural forest and you've got this whole variety of plants all around you, from the smallest to the tallest, and as each one is giving you a different magnetical field, a gravitational field, it makes you feel better. You feel very refreshed after you've come out of a walk on the forest, because the plants, when you're walking through the forest, the plants have given you some of their fields. And at the same time, one has to now remember that we also have to give our energy to the plants as well. And in the plant world, one can see how each plant and each variety works together. They all have their little space, but they will accommodate each other. These we've taken from our garden just to illustrate the different shapes of the leaves. When one starts to appreciate nature and really start looking at your plants in the garden, it'll be amazed at the variety that one can get. Here's parsley leaves and passion fruit leaves, totally different. There's a strawberry leaf on the left and a typical fern. Totally different shapes of leaves, different species. So when we look at the different shapes, we have to understand that each shape is interacting with these fields in the environment in a different way. So each shape creates a specific maggrav field to attract those specific fields that the plant needs. If we have a look at the arrangements of the leaves on the stems, we have on the left, we have those leaves which are directly opposite each other. In the middle is what they call a whorl, so you have almost a circular movement of the leaves all around the stem. And the one on the right is alternate, so the leaves aren't opposite, but they are like viewed as a step ladder all the way up the stem. So even these shapes, the arrangements of the leaves on the stems also creates different maggrav fields for those different plants. If we look at the leaf margins and the edges of the leaf, you can see some of them are quite serrated, others are very smooth, some have just a few little dents in, and some are very furry on the ends. There you can see on the left is the strawberry plant on the left, which has very defined, almost sawtooth type edges. And the other leaf on the right is very round. There's no real sharp edges barring that one point. So those edges of the leaves also interact with the fields. Those are the edges of your leaves is almost the sort of entry point for the fields to come into the plants. One then has to look at the leaves as well, but the veins within those different leaf structures there. And you can see each plant, each different leaf will have a totally different structure of their veins. And this too adds to the whole dimension of creating a different magnetic field for the plants. The color as well, one has to look at the different colors of the leaves, from purple to yellow to pink. There's a huge variety of colors on the leaves, and these again, with the different colors, are also creating different magnetic fields to attract what they want. Even just if we just look at the color green, we have different shades of green from different plants, and all these different shades of colors do the same thing. They also create different magnetic fields for the plants to attract the different elements that they need. If we look at the thickness of the leaves as well, they also create different magnetic fields. So what you can see is a huge variety in the plant world. They're all doing essentially the same thing. They're all creating their own magnetic fields around the plants, but the different shapes and sizes are creating those specific needs for the plants. So the third concept is plants are living reactors. We've been taught that we need to create our own reactors with the 3 balls and 1 at the top, but essentially the plants are doing that themselves within their structures, because when you look at their height, their shape of leaf, the arrangement of the leaf, the color, the thickness, the vein structure, these all create specific magnetic fields for that particular plant. That plant is then able to attract and create from the environment the fields of the elements that they need for their energy. So each plant is its own little reactor. And the beauty about the nature is one can understand that there's no motors either in the plant world. They're all doing it on a very subtle basis with the plasma. So by understanding how the plants are doing it will give us greater insight into how for us humans to do it in our matter state. So everything we can see is everything interacts with everything else, from the soils to the leaves to the environment, the shapes, as we've gone before. Everything is interacting with everything else through these magnetic fields. As plants are living sentient beings, will we still to continue to eat them in the future? This will be a great question, I think, that many of us will have to contemplate many years down the line, once we start to connect with our plants and nature. But at this stage, I think it's better for us to start communicating and interacting with our plants and almost understanding where our food is coming from and appreciate the plant world. From the plant world, it extends into everything else. When we just have a brief look at our whole plasma ecosystem, the soils that the plants have grown into is also a living entity. the bacteria, the fungi, earthworms, insects, they're all living entities. These are also connected to our rocks, crystals, and minerals in the soils, which are also living entities. These are all connected to the earth, which is another living entity. So we can move from the universe all the way down to the bacteria in the soil. It is all the same. Everything is connected with everything else, but just on a different scale. So everything is alive and everything is interacting with everything else. So the summary of that is that the three concepts that we want you to take home is that plants are essentially now called vertical people because they have their own emotions and souls. The plants are interacting with the fields to obtain their food source, and plants are living reactors. Now we'll be able to open it up for any questions and answers, and I can go back to the beginning of the slide if we want to go through it that way. And as we go through again, then people can just ask any questions that they might have. Are there any questions? Has anybody heard that? Or are we talking? We haven't been talking to ourselves.
Maybe they can't speak. Maybe the mic's on YouTube. I think you've muted the mic somehow.
Hello, is anybody there?
There's a ding dong. Who's that? Yep. On that button there.
Hello, is anybody there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I noticed there's some questions in the Q&A from Alfonso and Neil and Ross, Martin, and Mary. Can you see those questions?
We'll have a look.
If you can't find them, I can ask them for you.
Yeah, I'm battling with just to maneuver around this. If you wouldn't mind, then Rick.
Yeah, if you have one screen, it can be difficult sometimes.
Yes, that's.
Let me go through them. Alfonso says, why a person is more easy for them to create plants and others are not that good to have a plant alive. I think that's a rough translation. I think he's saying, why do some people have a green thumb and others
Yeah.
don't?
My understanding of that is that we tend to be able to feed our plants with our emotion. Zinc is very important to plants, more on a soul level than an emotional level for them, because they are made from soft metals. And so we connect our amino acids and our zinc plasma field to them. So if we care about them and we love them, they tend to grow much better. And it's also just a case of one has to learn and understand. It's very important to observe one's environment and understand one's environment to be able to grow well, because a lot of people just tend to move into a house, look at their garden, and say, okay, well, I'll go to the nursery and I'll buy a few of these plants and I'll throw them in, and they all die. But they haven't taken care of the soil first, which is quite important. They haven't looked at where the shade is, where the sun is, whether the plant is happy in that spot. So it's a case of starting to understand the environment and the plants and to take care of all their needs, not just their nutritional needs, but their emotional needs too.
I can just add to that, and many experiments have been done where if you take two plots next to each other and you plant the same plants, and every day you go to the one and you give it the love and attention, and every day you go to the other one and you can swear it, you can hate it, and ignore it, and you'll find that the one that you've given the love and attention to will grow so much better than the other one. So a lot of the growing comes down to our intention and that connection with the plants as well. That makes the big difference. Okay.
Okay, part of what goes along with that, I suppose, is what Neil asked next, which is when a vertical person, excuse me, jump there. When a vertical person becomes ill, how can we determine which fields are unbalanced?
It's a good question. Thank you. I think one has to look at the totality of it in terms of what plants need. Look at the environment around them, because sometimes they could be very happy plants for a couple of years, and all of a sudden they're not growing, they're not happy. So have a look at what's changed around their environment, because often any changes that we might have done will affect their environment, and so that translates into an unhappy plant, essentially.
And often what will happen with an unhappy plant is it will call the bugs to it. It will essentially share itself with the bugs until it dies, because it knows it's dying. So that will push the cascade of its dying even further. So often you'll find, for example, you'll pop in a tamarillo, for example, and for 2 or 3 years you'll have the most beautiful tamarillo plant with wonderful fruit, and the next year you'll have a huge amount of rain, for example, and tamarillos don't like to have very wet soils, so it will literally over a couple of weeks just fall over and die. This you can't help, but when we look at just general illness of plants, we can do a lot to help them with the basic ganses, and that is where we will start getting into with the applications.
I suppose too that the color of a plant is often an indication of fields out of balance, or different minerals that might, or elements that might be necessary. Correct?
Yes, that's very true. Often when you look at, say, citrus fruit and they start going pretty yellow, it's usually a lack of magnesium. And in the past, I always went and threw Epsom salts all over my citrus fruit, and then they green right up again. So yes, it definitely helps to also understand. Go ahead.
So in that sense, I'm just thinking myself, are we determining which fields are unbalanced in that process? Is that part of what happens when people become very sensitive to the plants. They're actually determining the fields in a way more than, just the color or just the whether they're wilting or not or have a mark on them or something like that. So instead of just physicality, becomes more of a field balancing act, you might say.
Yes, because a lot of people that have been around growing and their crops for many, many years, their whole lifetime, will just take a look at a plant and they'll know instinctively that it's not getting enough of this mineral or not getting enough of that. What we begin to understand is that if the plant's given the right conditions in the beginning, it will create those minerals that it needs. That somewhere along the line, it's unable to, in its mechanism internally, it's unable to create those fields that it needs.
Because if we understand that plasma fields act as a magnet for more plasma fields in the environment, what will happen, for example, is you'll grow a small tree, and once it's really well established, basically it's fine. But it's the young trees and the young plants that tend to suffer the most because they need to build up the contents of the correct magravs in their system to gravitate and pull in the same again. Because what we're coming to understand is that it's not just what's coming out of the ground and the soil. They're absorbing fields from the soil and the water, but they're also absorbing fields from the environment and the top. So it's a mixture, and yes, they need the minerals mainly from the ground and the amino acids mainly from the top. So if you can give your plants a good start and they start off really well, then they have a much better chance of survival.
Okay, you mentioned water. Ross asks, what part does water play in plant growth?
As we're beginning to understand, water is essentially becomes the carrier of the fields. So when you look at when it rains, when we have a good rain, after a good rain, the plants and the garden always springs to life. And so essentially what's happening is the water, the rain is bringing in all the amino fields from the upper atmosphere is in the rainwater. And so when they hit the ground, the plants are able to absorb those fields directly. So essentially the water becomes the carrier. Even in the ground, when we throw fertilizer on the ground, we can throw it on the ground, but if there's no water, if you don't add water to it, it doesn't work. So by adding the water, the fertilizer, the water is essentially carrying the field of that nitrogen fertilizer, and that is what's giving it to the plants. So it just becomes the carrier.
What also happens is that your water, which is your H2O, is in essence the bottom of the star formation. And if you add your nitrogen, you get your top reactor of your star formation, and you're creating a primal field there. So that allows for a much stronger field interaction, and the plants can absorb that and what they need from that much easier. So yes, the water is essentially also a plasma. That's what most people haven't seemed to understand, and that because water is a plasma, it can do all these miraculous things because it is fields, and it is, in a sense, living.
Okay, Mary asks, what is the purpose of the vertical people now that we know?
Another good question that makes you ponder. I think the purpose...
Other than food for humans,
yeah.
I suppose, is the question, of course.
Yeah. Plants, I think when we have a look at the evolution, plants have been here a lot longer than we as people. So we might be the ones that are intruding in their world. We can look at it that way.
I also think that maybe the plants are the living interaction that the Earth has sort of created for itself, because Mother Earth is a living being, and so all the creatures on the planet are her way of interacting with everything else. And so the plants and ourselves, and we're all just part of the totality of the planet and the universe. And what the plants are going to do is teach us to communicate with all the other living beings before we can ever go to space. If we can't communicate with our plants or our animals, we're certainly not going to interact with somebody from planet Zeus, as Mr. Keshe always says. So yeah, it's a place to start, and it's a place to understand.
One can also look at the plant world as the interaction between the fields, because if you look at a barren piece of land that a farmer's just plowed up, there's just plain earth and soil there. There's very little interaction with the fields coming in. Whereas if you have a field full of plants, different varieties of species and trees, you get a huge interaction of the plants interacting with the fields coming in. And then those plants are able to transfer and give those fields off to Mother Earth as well. So the plant world can also be seen as the interface as well. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. I see we have 2 viewers here. If they could be promoted to panelists so they could ask their question. Maybe Jackie could do that as a co-host. I'm not able to.
Okay.
Or if you can, if you, Jim or Lisa, if you could do that. Okay, one's been promoted, and I presume the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. It was Ross and Yo.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Hello, Ross.
Hello, Rick. Am I able to ask a question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
I've put it in the chat, but one of my experiences was that a person placed crystals in a hole before he planted the trees, and in fact that was supposed to have beneficial results with the growth of the trees. Have you heard of this, or do you use this to induce better field strengths in the growth of the trees or whatever?
Ross, we haven't used crystals yet, but what you've got to understand what a crystal is a crystal is almost a solid form of a plasma. So a lot of people throughout history have used what they call gem essences. So they would place a crystal in a bowl of water in the sunlight, and essentially the magnetic fields of that crystal gets imprinted into the water. And then they would use that water for all sorts of medicinal purposes. So yes, by placing certain crystals in the soils with your trees, you're essentially doing the same thing.
And you're also magnifying, because your crystals do tend to magnify, especially things with points. Almost like a pyramid will magnify fields up to its point at the top.
Yes.
You get the same with the crystals.
Yes, in this case it was quartz and rose quartz, yes. So that is a magnifier.
Yes, and I have no doubt that they do help, because I've used crystals for many applications, and I've even tried a few things with crystals and the plasma balls, for example, to see what effects it will have. So yes, there is going to be a place for the crystals too.
You've used plasma balls, because I have actually placed plasma balls on the branches after Mr. Keshe suggested that would be a good idea. Have you done that and achieved some results?
We are busy with that. We haven't looked at our final results yet, but it's also understanding what you're trying to create. So if you're hanging two balls, what field interaction you're getting, and whether it's the field interaction that you want. So we're just starting to understand that, because, you know, one can make as many balls as you like and have a hit and miss approach and just hang as much as you can and hope like hell you get something, or you can understand what you're doing. So we're finally plodding along into the understanding part.
I understand what you're saying. I actually used a spray and sprayed the trees just after the flower stage and got a remarkable result. I just wondered, probably I wouldn't have to spray all the trees for fruit, that is, and place the balls on the trees, and someone suggested that I should nanocoat the inside of the ball. I'm using ping pong balls actually, before I put the CO2 plus, what is it, amino acid in, a slight touch of amino acid.
Yes, Ross, I think that's the whole point with a lot of these teachings, and as well, is to get people to play. And the more you play and you try different things, I mean, in my experiences, we've learned more from our mistakes than setting out certain experiments. And so the more you try those things, we're all learning, and it'll be great to give feedback, you know, take lots of photographs of before and after and what you've done, and then we can all start understanding and learning together. So yes, thank you.
Unfortunately, with the trees I'm experimenting with, they're only an annual crop. Say for instance figs. I believe somebody actually placed CO2 GANs in containers around the base and got huge figs. Well, I haven't done this, but I believe if I place balls on various places around the tree, it may induce the figs to be sweeter or taste better or perhaps larger. Have you had any experience in this, Jimmy? Or?
As I say, we've looked at some of our tomatoes that we've grown. In our aquaponic system, and by adding the fields into the aquaponic system, we've gotten huge variety of flavors out of our tomatoes that one would normally get. So the fields do make an impact on the flavor and the taste. We have also sprayed those tomatoes with a mixture of ganses, and that did seem to really get them going well. The only problem is, as we know with this Australian climate, the fruit fly has gotten in now and stung everything, and the birds have gotten in and the parrots and eaten everything.
I understand that. I've just had to net some trees to stop the parrots eating the new fruit.
So this is a huge problem. When we can figure out how to use the plasma to chase away all the pests, then that will be the ultimate goal. But you know,
what possibility is it, Lisa, that Mr. Keshe said not particularly pests, but it does protect the tree in some shape or form. I'm not sure what he meant, but in the long run, would that be a possibility?
You see, if you create a really, really healthy tree, then all of those, you know, those things that take advantage of a sick tree won't be able to take hold. So, you know, your fungal things, your moldy things, your aphid problem that pulls in because the tree is diseased, you won't get any of that. Unfortunately, when you put out a feast for the creatures in the environment, and at the moment we're in drought here, and so there's nothing else for them to eat, they've just gone a little bit mad. So, and eaten everything in sight. So, yeah, we'll just have to see how we can work on that one.
Right, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I could keep asking questions, but in fact, I would prefer to give somebody else a chance.
Well, there certainly are more questions here, and as well, I think, is it Jao Batista? How do you pronounce Joao and the?
That's Joe, and he was in our last agriculture teaching, so he says to call him Joe.
Joe, okay, good. He wanted to be promoted to a panelist, so maybe he has something he'd like to say. And there's Alfonso, I see, has his hand up. Maybe you could promote him because he had some questions in the Q&A, such as, how does music affect plants, and why does music affect positively to the vertical people?
Well, I think when we begin to understand music is also a MAGRAPH field. So certain types of musics would be beneficial to plants. It's the same as when you play music to a baby in the womb. You know, you play certain nice classical music and they're happy, and you play heavy metal, rock and roll, and sometimes the baby will give you a nice kick because they don't like the music.
Well, what about the vertical people? Do they like the heavy rock and roll? I haven't heard any studies about that. Is there music that plants don't like? That's a good question.
Well, I'd probably hazard a guess that it's a lot of the current music in the world because it's really, really awful.
Like discordant music, you mean? Well,
so, yeah, I mean, many people have done a lot of experiments around the world with using music and have had fantastic results. So it's another avenue there to enhance the plants.
Some people have said recently that Bach is particularly good for plants because of its based on the, I don't know, the Fibonacci spiral or the a mathematical relationship.
Yes, well, you know, I didn't bring it into the presentation today because that's a whole other story, but the plants and the trees all grow in a Fibonacci ratio. The leaf arrangements is all Fibonacci. The whole of nature grows in a Fibonacci sequence. So by playing the music that's attuned to that ratio, you're going to essentially be giving them the feels that they need.
Okay, maybe we can hear from Joe. Joe, do you want to open your microphone?
Yes, Rick is speaking.
Hello.
This is João Batista from Brazil. Thank you, Rick, to promote me. I'm a Keshe Foundation student, and I receive another account to log in to this teachings. That's because I asked you to promote me because I enter as a viewer. But I don't have any question for a moment because it's the second time that I do the teachings. I just arrived. I'm listening for a while. Thank you, Rick.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
We can go on, I guess, to maybe we'll get Ross to just mute the microphone temporarily here. I know you still probably have some questions to ask there. Neil says, I am in a thunderstorm now. What part does lightning, etc., have on the fields and their distribution with respect with the vertical plants?
I'm sorry, Neil, we haven't gotten that far with our learning yet. We'll have to defer that question for a few months.
You can set up a big Tesla coil in your backyard and have lightning bolts shooting all over the place. That would be interesting.
I don't think I quite want to do that yet. We might just burn the place down.
Well, you'd be living in plasma then, that's for sure. Son Kim asks, what is the best way to grow a large and healthy plant? That's a pretty general.
This is a very hard question. because you've got to know what plant you're growing for a start.
Well, maybe
And yes, you do have to look at pardon?
I was going to say, maybe you can look at just the general conditions for, in a plasmatic way for, most plants, let's say, generally speaking. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
No problem. One has to look at the place where you're going to be growing your plant, what the soil conditions are like, because if you're going to start with a plant in a very bad soil conditions, it's not going to be conducive for great growth. You also got to understand your plants and don't plant them in shady areas versus sunny areas if they don't want those conditions. So you have to understand what conditions the plants are best happy in. And then using the plasma, it's when you are planting new plants, I think our best recommendation is to water your ground very well with the CO2 and plant, and the same when once it's planted, and then for probably several weeks thereafter. And you'll probably help that plant adapt to those different conditions.
Okay, there's one last question in the Q&A right now, and it's from Alfonso, which he can probably also comment on it. I do see there's two viewers with Klaus and Lisa, three more now with Rodrigo as well. So there's a couple of people to bring in there. And Alfonso asks, though, if we do not have a need to eat, at some point when we started to eat vertical people, what is the reason to eat? I guess he was saying at one point we didn't have a need to eat it. Where did it start that we needed to eat the vertical people?
Well, yeah, with Mr. Keshe's teachings, it seems to be that as we sort of came out of the primordial super fields and decided to take on a physical reality on this planet, some of us decided to only absorb fields from their environment, which are the vertical people. Whereas what we did is we decided to create this tube, which we had to put things into to gain the energy we needed and the extra vitamins and minerals and such to be able to survive. So yes, eventually we won't have to eat, but if we can understand how the plants absorb the fields and how we can use this knowledge to help us to absorb the fields, then yes, eventually we won't need to. But I think, yes, once we can access all that historical record that I'm sure we're going to be able to in the plasmas, then maybe we'll find out exactly why we decided to eat.
Eating also has a very emotional attachment to it from a human perspective, in terms of socializing. We have breakfast, lunch, and supper. You take away the food, you are affecting the humans emotionally on an emotional level. I think that's our biggest hurdle that we have to overcome in not eating, is the emotional aspect of it. Any other question?
There's some people that just came in here, so I'm sure there's some questions from them.
Otherwise, we can carry on.
Yeah, we do have a whole other part of our presentation, which is all to do with the practical applications. Okay. So if there aren't any other questions, we can go on to that one.
Well, I know that Klaus and Lisa and Rodrigo had their hands up. They might have just wanted to become panelists, but if they would like to ask a question, that would be a good time, I guess. Going once, going twice. Okay, I think maybe we should move on.
Hello, Rick. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Jim. This is Klaus from Austria.
Oh, hi, Klaus.
Hello. I work for 25 years in the field of restructuring the soil and the water, and we work with the diamagnetic fields from the minerals. And we see when we harmonize the Earth's magnetic field, the last years we look not at the gravitational field. We don't understand this, but now we understand this kind of work from the plant. And so we can see when we harmonize the Earth's magnetic field, you know, the Earth's magnetic field is come less and less down. And so the fields, we can bring new fields into the structure of the plants and bring, as we see, very special results with this kind of work with the plasma, with the liquid plasmas. And in this year, we see the first reaction on seeds of the plant. They have grown natural style from April to June, and they bring fruits, and then they became CO2 liquid plasma, and then they begin a second part of growing and brings new fruits in the second time, and that was the first time in Austria that we can see this. Klaus, Dr. Brilla have photographed these plants, and it's a very interesting project for the next year. Maybe we can, in colder environments, bring it to a second harvest. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Klaus. That's what we've also noticed as well with some of our plants. They've grown through our winter period very well and started producing the tomatoes very early. And I think, yes, the implications are in certain areas of the world that you would be able to get 2 crops out of a season because one can plant very early and move into your next season quite late as well. So that will, yes, have a lot of ramifications, and so thank you.
Yeah, yes. What we can also see is we have grown tomatoes, and they're called datarinis. They from the from the southern part of Italy, and we harvest them on the end of September. And I can show you these tomatoes. They only are good. I have to step down in the other room and bring it in, and maybe I can show you this. This is, I think, the laying for 2 months, and all tomatoes are good.
Klaus, can we leave that till the end of the workshop, yes, that we can just open for people to show things?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions?
The only other question in the Q&A is, Neil says, I suspect the biodynamic systems of Rudolf Steiner is creating and manipulating plasma fields in the soil with the cow horn formula. Have you any info on this?
Yeah, we've looked at the biodynamics very closely because we live on a biodynamic farm. So when I look at the basics of biodynamics, and I haven't gone into it in very much detail, but what I have looked at, it's essentially the plasma is the science behind the biodynamics, because a lot of the biodynamics is based on sort of science that people have not been able to understand. And I see how this plasma is the way that will explain all of that biodynamic side of things. So they work hand in hand, very much so.
Could we get Ross Martin to mute the microphone, or get someone to mute it for him, please?
All right, if there's no more questions, then we'll carry on.
Now for the scary part. This is people's homework, I suppose. which nobody expected to do when they came on the show today.
What I've tried to do was ways of incorporating the plasma into our gardens in a very effective way. So I've sort of just termed it the plasma activator, because when one looks at our traditional compost composition that farmers use and gardeners use, we have the following: carbon, which is from your brown twigs, all your dried material. Your nitrogen comes from all your greener vegetables, your lawn clippings and coffee grounds. By adding moisture to your compost, you're adding the oxygen. If you're adding animal manure, it's cow, chicken, these are also sources of nitrogen, and particularly sources of amino acids. Your sugars and carbohydrates by adding molasses, and fire ash by providing the minerals. So that's your traditional way of composting one's garden. When we try and look at what's going on there in a plasma state, when the plant matter that one is making a compost of, we have to understand that that is already in a GAN state, the plant itself, and is mainly composed of your CoHan in amino acid forms. So we have to now realize that the plants are all in a GAN state. The microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi break down this GAN matter further for us. And then when we look at the earthworms, these become particularly important because they also take this vegetation and break it down. But the earthworms take in fine rock dust into their stomachs, and they grind this food down using these tiny little rocks in their stomachs. So what the earthworms are essentially doing is taking the rocks and the minerals and turning them into almost nanoparticles of the different elements. And then when you add that to the salts in the soils, what you're doing is creating the GANs of different elements from the earthworms. And that's why when you look at people that farm earthworms and take that liquid off the earthworm farms and they use that as a fertilizer, that liquid contains huge amounts of different elements in a GAN state. And that's why the worm castings and everything are so effective. So that's trying to explain the composting in sort of a plasma way. All of these processes are done by nature, result in the breakdown of the organic materials into the basic carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen, along with your amino acids and minerals. The problem with compost that we buy in today is that a lot of that is polluted because of our polluted world. So we get pesticides, plastics, chemicals, and medicines coming into our compost that we then buy in. So we have to start looking at how we can build up our own compost in our own garden, but not in the way that we've thought before. Because if we look at our current way of composting, a lot of people just cut and remove their green waste. They'll mow their lawns and trim their trees, and they'll send it off to the municipal dump. And then this gets turned into a compost. They then gets sold to the shops, and then we go back to the shops and buy our same compost again. And so this is essentially what has been happening. But the compost that's made today is just lacking in everything. So we have to look at the new paradigm with the plasma soils. Because we treat our soils and our land as a non-living entity to be used and abused, the stuff that we're sending to the municipal dumps and everything for making the compost is lacking a lot of the minerals. We have to look at the multitude of organisms which are needed to make the healthy soils in the environment. So we'll have our micro universe of bacteria, algae and fungi, our macro universe of the insects, earthworms and nematodes. And as we've said, we've got that connection with the soil, with our plant universe. And so we need to have all these interactions going on to create a better compost or better soil and garden environment. So what we've looked at doing is, if one looks at taking some CO2 GANS water and we use that in our gardens, this creates the connection via the amino acids in the plants because of the carbon and oxygen connection in the plants and all other living things. And so it's essentially the stronger feeding the weaker, because our CO2 would be in a certain field strength, and we then, if we're exposing the plants to that field strength, that would be feeding the plants, and so giving the plants that additional fields that they need. The C-GANs, from our perspective, is also very important for the plants, because in most areas the soils are very depleted of minerals, and so one has to look at adding back the whole range of minerals to the soils again. And this can be done using the C-GANs, because when you make the C-GANs, it contains the field strengths of all the minerals and elements on this planet. And so when you feed this to your soil and the biology, it creates magnets to attract additional fields of the elements from the environment. So by adding the plasma water of the C-GANs into your soils and around your plants, you are also then creating the opportunity to attract additional minerals from the environment around the plants. If you look at CH3 GANS water, that provides energy for all the living creatures, particularly in the soil, because of the hydrogen component of that. Hydrogen is essentially the energy for plants and sort of for the soil biology. And the zinc water makes the plants happy, and it'll make you happy at the same time by when you start spraying these around your garden. When you add these plasma waters, also add in the amino acids of the CO2 and C-GANs and the CH3 that you've made into this mix. And then if you use this mix on your gardens, your beds, and spraying around your gardens, this will start slowly changing the environment. So what we'd like you to try and do at different experiments at home is to prepare a small area that you wish to plant, even if it's a small little bed next to your house, a big pot holder, and then essentially seed with a green manure crop containing as many different types of seeds. So you take carrots and turnips and parsley and herbs, basil, all sorts of seeds that you might just have at home lying around. Put them all into a pot. When you look at doing this, try and make a look at your seed mix as a food forest, because you want to be able to eat from this as well. So if you put a whole lot of seeds, that'll give you food, or if you just create a flower meadow, or a combination of both. You soak the seeds in the GANS water mixture for about 4 to 6 hours. And then you just go and plant those in your bed that you have created. Spray that area in the garden with the GANS mixture in a homeopathic strength, so one doesn't have to use huge amounts. If you take your liquid plasma water and you take 5 or 10 mils of that into a bucket of water, and you use that onto your garden. And say, just go around and spray your whole grass, your flowers, everything in your garden, and you will start seeing massive changes in your garden. But you have to be observant and see those changes. So water all these seeds with the liquid plasma during the growth. And at the end of the growth period, what you're going to end up with is this huge variety of the plants that you've grown. So in a small little area, you might end up having a variety of 30 different plants in that area. Now, if you understand the earlier concepts that each plant is a reactor, and each plant will attract in those fields of the minerals that it needs, then you realize that each and every one of your plants that you've got in there contains a huge amount of different minerals, different amino acids, in different combinations. So when you cut that crop and you just leave it onto that soil, or you leave those plants to reseed, and the new growth will come through. And so you don't dig those plants out, you just leave them. They will slowly decompose, and they're putting all those minerals, those additional minerals, back into your soil. So if you do this over several times, you can do it 2 or 3 times a year, of a couple of years, what you're going to end up creating is a huge, rich soil, because you're getting the plants to almost act as your, to capture the fields from the atmosphere and to put it into the soils for you. So it's a whole new way of looking at how the plants can do this. Because as I said earlier, each plant is a living reactor. And so by seeding your variety of plants, we introduce many maggraph fields in your grow area. These attract and absorb a great variety of fields from the environments, of different elements. Each plant will then turn these fields into various combinations of gases, minerals, and amino acids. And by putting them back into the soil, you're adding these minerals and amino acids back into the soil. And then they in turn will also act as magnets to attract additional fields and create additional minerals in your soil there. This way you're creating tons of compost in your garden without having to bring anything in. And you're essentially asking and allowing the plants to do all that work for you. By using the liquid plasmas on the seeds and the environment, you're creating the healthiest and the happiest plants that one can have. It's using the gases is essentially the stronger fields feeding the weaker fields. Eat what you need and allow the rest to feed the soils. Thank the plants when you take them for food as well. This whole connection with the plasma and the plant world is there for us to reconnect to nature. And by understanding the plants and what they're doing and how we can affect the plants, it opens up a whole new universe to most of us. So we don't have to go out of space to explore the universe. We just have to go outside our front door to explore a whole new universe. So I hope one has understood that, and we sort of exposed you to a whole new world. This was the beginnings of our patch that we'd done 2 weeks ago. We chose this particular bed because the soil is very bad, so we would like to rejuvenate that soil. And so we've seeded carrots, beetroot, basil, lettuce, endives, peanuts, turnips, radish, spring onions, every seed I could find I've thrown in here. So we'll give feedback on this. But we'd like everybody else to do that as well, because it's very simple, and it's a nice, easy way to get started with plasma in your garden. Any questions on that?
We have a viewer with his hand up, Kevin. Maybe he could be promoted. There is one question, it's not quite related, but Maria says, thank you for this wonderful learning opportunity. May I ask if I can view the recording again? Thank you, love and peace. This will be recorded for YouTube, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so she could check out it'll be on the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute YouTube channel, I suspect. And
That's
also on your channel, do you want to put a plug in for that now while it's open?
Yeah, we do have the Plasma School Library Australia YouTube channel, which is linked up to the Facebook page, which is Plasma School Library. And what I'm trying to do there is to just put really relevant facts, information, files that people who need the basics can get their hands on, because I find a lot of the other Facebook stuff is sort of like a goldfish bowl, and it's there for 2 seconds and it's gone. So I wanted to start creating a bit of a library myself, and I'm not too technically savvy, so that's where I've started.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kevin. Thank you, Rick, for promoting me. Hello, Jim. Hello, Lisa. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I just tuned in about 10 minutes ago, so I'm a little bit late. Highly fascinating what you're telling. I have a question. I don't know, are you already in that stage where you can test, since we're eating this with all our gratitude and thanks, these plants, but what about the nutritional value? Have you noticed, like, if you eat, plasmatized vegetables, that you need less of some fruits or vegetables and that you feel differently, or that your body, are you already in that stage where you can test that?
Yeah, no, we've been eating what we call our plasmarized lettuce for a long time. It's when we compared to our growth a year ago before we started using the plasma, it's like comparing chalk and cheese. The lettuces are so much more healthier, crispier. The flavors that one gets from each and every different type of lettuce, you can tell the difference.
They're also sweeter, and unfortunately we can't tell whether they make us more full, because we drink the plasma, we live in the plasma at the moment. So it's more a case of understanding, because we sell to certain small grocers. What we've discovered is our lettuce sales, for example, through winter, which normally falls down. We have much lower sales in winter. This winter, the sales never fell off. So we had the same amount of people buying the same amount of lettuce, which it sort of says to me, either our marketing has been really good, or they actually see the lettuce and they crave it because they know, their bodies instinctively know it's good for them. So that's the only thing we can tell from our commercially selling our salad at the moment.
Thank you so much. It's highly fascinating. Well, I will just follow up on that. I think it could be worth our own study group. Just how you feel after those trials and growing your own plasmatized vegetables and fruits. Yeah.
I think when they start talking back, then we won't want to eat them anymore. That's the only problem.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
What we're doing here is we're putting ourselves out of a job eventually.
Any other questions there, Rick, that you can see?
Nope, no more in the Q&A right now.
Is Klaus still there? Because he wanted to show us something.
Yes, he is.
Okay, come 1 minute, please.
Thanks.
I was wondering if Rodrigo had anything to show as well. He usually does medical units, but he had a big tube with Gans water in it that he was using as a healing tube. And it's very similar to the actual tubes that people were using in Mexico and some other places to put around plants. You put a tube of Gans, you know, like a plastic tube that goes around the plant, and that was producing good results.
When we've used our tubes, what we've sort of felt, and when I've done a bit of ice experiments, is that it definitely concentrates the fields to the center of the circle. So it's quite a nice way to make sure that the fields are getting directed to the middle. I've made a lot of Gans bracelets that I've used, and they also are very effective. And the ice trials showed my one ice trial actually ended up with a whole air pocket in the center of the ice that it literally pushed the ice right out and left a big hole in the middle. So they are very strong. And yes, I haven't really done a huge amount on the bigger plants, which I think need the tubes, because most of our stuff is small things that grow very fast. So yeah, I don't have a lot of scope to try on the bigger things.
Lisa, can I share my screen? Then I can show you the tomatoes, the tatarinis.
Yeah. I'll just stop share there.
At first, we make special types of compost. You see this, a tree compost.
I'm not seeing your sharing yet.
Let's see. Okay, stop and share again.
Oh, maybe it's coming up there now.
Now you can see?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And we worked 10 years ago with a man of the tree from Australia and showed the people to build this type of ring composts. And any section of this compost has a different type of fields of different elements. And so you have in the garden a wonderful spectrum of different types of elements in one compost string. This is other kind to make a compost. And so maybe I can share the camera. Doesn't work. Oh, sorry.
You tried to start video and it didn't work?
No, my camera.
Try again, it will work.
Okay.
Or you might have to select it in the video settings.
Yes, but the button does not work. I cannot start the video. Maybe.
Is it a video that you're showing on your desktop, you mean? Or
no, I want to bring it with the camera from the computer.
Okay, sometimes if you plug in the camera again, it might help if it's a USB.
Okay, maybe the next time.
There we go.
I
No.
see the screen sharing now.
No, but the video doesn't. Okay, I have to try it and bring it in the next time. No problem.
Can you explain a bit about the compost? That was really interesting.
Klaus, are you there?
We're not hearing you, Klaus. Maybe you have your microphone muted in your...
Okay, now you can hear me.
Yes, now.
Okay. First, we have different kind of composts. We make this. This is a professor, nearly a Nobel Prize winner, was my teacher, and we make compost from wine grapes, special type of wine grapes. There is a project between Austrian government and Spanish government. I can bring it in the next months in. Then next we bring into the soil special types of beer grapes. When you preparate the beer, we can make a special compost. Then also from different sea plants and from humus from earthworms. And with this 4 different kind of humus or compost, we bring in special mineral fields and humus fields into the soil to reconstruct the soil, and also the water structure with this. So we re-mineral and re-humify, and bring in different humus molecules into the soil. And so we start a new process in the earth. And when you only work with the PD products, you wake up the electric fields. All the homeopathic things wake up the electric force, but the ground needs also the magnetic and the gravitational force. And so at the last year, we understand this more and more and can bring it, this old type of method with the new types together. And this ring compost have 16 different sections. Maybe I can bring it in one photo. And these 16 elements is the background for the metabolism for the water. No.
Are you showing the picture again, Klaus? Or
I'm searching for some picture.
oh.
There you can see the 16 elements. Also, Victor Schauberger, you know this guy. He was a forceman in Austria and bring all the understanding for the inclusion. And he builds also very special types of reactors for bringing new types of water. And sometimes when he bring into the water CO2, he earns petroleum. And this was the first time we see that we can, with different fields and with different motion, bring it to transmutation from the elements.
So, Klaus, just explain that again. So, with the water and the CO2, they...
Yes, in Europe there are different projects to bring together water and CO2 for gasoline. Yes, and Victor Schauberger make these things in the early 30s, last century. And when he wanted to build up a healing water, sometimes when he bring the water temperature nearly the 4 grade Celsius, he bring out not water, not healing water, he brings out petroleum. The CO2 comes together with the water. In all water we have carbon. Water is not only oxygen and hydrogen, water have all the elements in.
Yes.
And when he bring this with a special vortex structure, then he becomes petroleum. In Austria, in Australia, there's also a guy that he have studied the whole thing from Victor Schaberger, who called Callum Coates. Maybe you know this guy or books from him.
Say his name again.
Callum Coates. I bring in a book from him.
Yeah, I've read a couple of books by him.
Yes.
And it ties in a lot with the Schauberger technology and ideas and so on, yeah.
Yes, and this was the first steps to bring into the ideas of the new understanding of plasma. I need 1 minute to look for these pictures.
No problem. Are there any other questions there, Rick?
There was just a comment from Neil saying he's placed bottles of Gans water midway in between the sick, thirsty trees. And Maria just put in the questions, Q&A. In Papenburg, Germany, several attempts have recently been made, and the process of making diesel from water is used for ships and other vehicles in public transport.
Yeah, I think when we begin to understand all this, we'll be able to make anything we want. It's just a case of putting it all together. Eh?
Hopefully we won't be making diesel fuel out of all this.
We won't need diesel now.
Rick, can you see my screen?
Many people is to create a synthetic diesel fuel. But, if it's anything even closely remote to the actual stuff, I think we'll be in trouble with it.
Yeah.
I think we have
Yes,
better
we can
options.
see your screen there, Klaus.
Okay, this is the dome structure, and there are from oxygen, molybdenum, chrome, gold, phosphor. You see all these kinds, and every type of the sectors have a different interaction with the water. Oxygen is called for the light. This is temperature. This is ionization. These are gold unknown things. This is ray minimum. This is ray transforming. These are the time factors. Yod are the things who are not so much in. This is the sound. This is pH. This is rotation. And every element have a different, brings a different reaction into the water and into the metabolism from water. And so when we bring all these elements together with the plasma and the soil to the plant, we have the full spectrum to integrate all the things from the earth, from the environment, from the sun into the plant. And we can show this in the crystal structure of water. When we have then a special salt and try this water, so we can see what happens into the roots water, or what happens into the normal water, or into the cell water for the plant or animal or a human being. Normal way, you see different structures in the water. healthy water brings a center, and you see different organic structures. It must be clear. And many types of this water, when you see the aqua test, it's not so good for a healthy cell, for a plant or for a human being. When we fill kidneys with a special type of plastic, you can show the inner arteries and veins. And when it's like similar as like the roots from a plant, and when they have not too much water, they begin to die up. So looks a normal plant, and looks a kidney from people. They have problems. They are dialysis patient. And this is very.
All the structures are the same.
Yes.
Those are beautiful.
Maybe you have seen my picture from the CO2, and this is very similar to Lourdes. The CO2 water, maybe Rick, you can bring the, or I can bring it, the CO2 pictures. You see a very similar kind to this.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they would be.
I look good.
I do remember Klaus had showed them before, and they are very, very natural, beautiful pictures. A lot of symmetry there.
Yes. Share again. Here, this is Ganz water. Very similar to the best healing spring in Europe. So we understand the information for the cells, information for the environment. This is so fine and so structured, and a very fine information to bring up in a higher level of order. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus. That's fantastic, because it's nice to see the, because a lot of what we do is theory at the moment, so it's nice to see these concrete pictures and evidence showing the two and showing what's actually going on. We can explain it from a plasma point of view, but it's fantastic to see it like that on the pictures.
Yes, and now we have to look to bring in or to test similar plants in similar and different environments, and so we can show people what is the difference between a natural plant and between a plant with hangs on the under the MBK drop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, would you be able to take the sap from a plant and do the same crystal photography?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we can easily compare.
We have a method to clear water, the structure in water. This called empty water, and we can give a little bit into the roots area from a plant, and 24 hours later we see the water structure from the roots of this empty water. Yeah, it's transformed into this empty water, and we can show the structure from a soil, or the structure from a plant. For a carrot, is biological or it is traditional. You can show this.
Yeah, so the whole structure of the plant has changed.
Yes, that
Great.
we can show the next time.
Yes.
This is my work for the next year.
Is there any way to show what's going on at the top of a plant, Klaus? In terms of the water at the top? Because, you know, what we're beginning to understand is that the soil is only half the story.
Yeah.
And so what the plant is pulling from the atmosphere and how it's reacting So if you're going to give it some plasma fields from the top, you wonder how one could test whether it's any different to just a normal, I suppose you could do it with the fruit possibly.
Yeah, maybe there is a type of method like Kirlian or high frequency photography. I can see these fields. I need no technique, but we have to show the people a technique that they can also see these fields.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at the biodynamic way that they do it with the chromatography?
Yes, I know this. I work for 30 years with the biggest companies or the biggest farmers in Austria. They all work with PD products, the Steiner work, and we see it's important to bring the magnetic fields, the carbon structure of the soil to a higher level, and bring in special types of minerals. Then the work from the PD products work much better.
And do the chromas actually? I suppose it's all in the interpretation. If you're good at interpreting what you're seeing,
we can, with the chroma test, we can see this. Yes.
yeah, because we've wondered how we can actually, prove that our stuff is different with the plasmas, and it's quite difficult to figure out how to do that.
Yes, we need a new method to show this, and I think the crystallization is one of the methods we can show this.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. The chroma test show you only how deep goes the structure into this paper, into this structure. You can see this, and with the crystallization, you see the different field interaction, the forces behind. Yeah. But we have to study this, and this is a new area. We have to learn and to study this and to understand this.
Yeah, we're only just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
We've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I can say the same. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Klaus. Are there any other questions or comments?
Maria says, thank you, Klaus. Just to remind the viewers that if you want to put up your hand virtually, there's a button for that, and then I can promote you to a panelist where you can then speak. Oh, there's a hand that came up from Vivian. Can someone promote Vivian, and then perhaps they have a question. Vivian, are you there?
I think we'll have to practice this a bit more, Rick, to figure out, because we've only done it with 2 people, so we need a few extras to learn how to wrangle all the people.
Yeah, it helps to have like 3 screens and all the things set up and so on. But yeah, I think Vivian decided not to be a panelist, or somehow was not, did not come in there. So you can put your hand up again, Vivian, if that was the case, and we can re-promote you. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, I think that, oh, I see. She says, I do not have a mic, so that didn't work.
Okay.
Let's see here. There was another question. there's something about a mistake in the quote about the process for making diesel. Something about the Google Translate makes mistakes. She says, sorry, the process of making diesel from water is ready to be used for ships and other vehicles in public transport. Equals Google Translate makes mistakes. So I think there was something lost in the translation there, at least. Anyways, Vivian does mention, hello from northern part of Norway. My question, will you put the video online afterward? We have 10 hours differences. So again, that was asked earlier, and there will be a YouTube video that will be put on, I assume, quite quickly afterwards, after the broadcast. Yes,
it will be put up. And the thing is, what we also would like to start doing is to, we're going to be putting the presentation into a PDF form and uploading it as a file to the education, the Facebook teachings page, and then also the our Plasma School Library Facebook page will also be having that, so that people can access a hard copy if they want, so that they can start kind of making notes or doing things for themselves.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, Vivienne says, thank you. We will follow you and make our agricultural group in Norway. Agriculture group in Norway. Mm-hmm.
I think through agriculture, people will begin to understand this plasma a lot easier when they just go out their front door and start looking at how nature works and understanding nature, and then to translate that back into what we have to try and do to understand and make plasma devices. It's going to be so much easier through nature. And it's just an excuse to go and get outside and walk amongst the plants and the bees and the birds. So
it seems to have all started with a CO2 box, which is basically a copy of a leaf. So I think it's quite fitting that the gardeners and the growers will show all the plasma interactions.
Yes, as Vivienne says, sustainable society building starts from agriculture and local farms. Best cases for demos of all Keshe's technology. And Son Kim says, I wanted to see Klaus's tomatoes. So I don't know if Klaus is willing to show his tomatoes, but they're in demand.
He had a problem with his camera there.
Yes, sorry, my camera does not so work that was. And next time I have to train this while I have to use this tool.
Okay.
You better take a photo of them, Klaus. Maybe they won't last till next time.
Well, you better you can make it as a something to look forward to in the next teaching. It's a draw for the next teaching, as we call it. Klaus's tomatoes coming up in part 2.
Yes.
Was there anybody else that wanted to ask anything or show anything? I don't know where Ross went. Ross was quite eager to ask some questions, but I don't know if he's still there.
Sorry, who is that again?
It was Ross. You know,
Ross Martin.
Yeah, Ross Martin.
I don't see him there now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we'll have to start, you know, each time we come on, I think we'll have more and more people coming to show us things, because it's the first time we haven't really got too many avid showers. So I don't know if we want to stop the teaching a bit early today, because yeah, if we haven't got anything else.
Maria asks about Klaus, the Klaus Dieter. You said you have the possibility to clean the water. Are you ready to present your technique? That could be something we could get into if Klaus is willing to do that, I suppose. Otherwise, that's the only other question right now.
Yes, in the meantime, we make this with the diamagnetic fields of the minerals. It's like a magnet. Like the same, we work now with the plasma tubes around a water pipe. We make this with these minerals on the left and the right side, or as a whole of the water pipe. And when the water goes through these diamagnetic fields, they're structured, and then you can see this structure in the crystal. So we built this. This comes in a household or by a farmer on the site where you're measuring the water consumption. And when the water goes through these fields, then it holds hundreds of meters this structure. Victor Schaberger says when you bring water in a pressure of 3 atmospheres, and you bring it more than 100 meters in a pipe, then he lost his soul. And what he say is exactly that what we see, the water left his living qualities. When you bring pressure into the water. Water only was like a meander, was swinging. When you see a blood vein or a river, you see always this swinging, yes? And when we fix it into a hole, then yeah, the soul goes down.
Your minerals, Klaus, are they in a like a powder form, like almost a nanomaterial?
There are different forms. We have a scale from rock dust to little stones, and when you basalt, diabase, dolomite, serpentine, the different minerals, and every kind of these minerals in a different shape has a different frequency. And when we mix it in the right combination, so we give water the missing information too, and it can bring out his natural forces again.
Do you think it's also gravitating some of the stuff out, because all your rocks and your dust and your minerals are all highly gravitational fields?
Not only gravitation, also the magnetic part.
Yes, as well, but yes. They are pretty. They can pull out as well as pushing in.
Yes, when we see water, the radiostatic man, when they use a pendulum, they say water have 2 types of spin. We all say all is good when it's at the right side. The vegetation built up in the spring, in the summer, and the post-spring builds up structure, and in the winter time it goes the other time. Yes, we have 2 parts of bring things out and 1 part to bring things in. It's the same like the magnetical and the gravitational side. You have 2 types in any type of element. It's not only gravitational, you have also the magnetical side, but a little bit less, or the other side is stronger. And so we have to study these different elements. What is the gravitational side? What is the magnetic side? And how we bring this in the right form, in the right spectrum together to reconstruct the soil and the water, the cells of the plant and all the other things. That's Klaus. My work for a long time. Please?
On those tubes around the pipe, have you just used the CO2 water in those tubes?
Yes, but in a mixture with other things.
Okay. And what, because I'm obviously got to look at it from a big irrigation point of view in terms of if you've got tubes around your irrigation pipe and your flow of the water, is it flow dependent in terms of the flow of the water versus being able to get the fields to change the water?
Yes, when you bring in a special movement from the outer thing to in, like an implosion, like a vortex,
Yeah.
there are many types of energies. They transmutate the minerals and the elements, and this bring this spectrum, the whole spectrum into the water and into the ground, into the soil.
Okay.
I have to show this in the next months. We build up different systems, and we can all copy this.
Yes.
But in different areas of the world, we have different types of minerals, different types of frequencies, different types of Earth magnetic field forces. And
Yes.
so we have to study this and build up this for this area. This is not for the whole world the same. This is very specially for every point in the Earth.
Yeah, we know all different soils in all over the world all have different components and different compositions of elements. So yes.
Yes. And we bring in, when we bring in this new field of plasma technology, we have a new field to reconstruct the soil and the water. In the normal time, we need tons of these materials to stabilize 100 hectares. With the plasma field, what we see, we can with 100 milliliters on the right point, on bioactive points of the Earth, we can bring in interactive things to build a dome for hundreds of kilometers. This is a new dimension.
Totally. I mean, one can, when you think of that, what you're saying and explaining, one can transform the environments around the world in very short order.
Yes. We make the first radioactive, plasma radioactive interaction points in Austria, in a very rocky area. And the second point on the nearly Venice in Italy. And we see how strong builds up this dome. And now we have, with the government in Austria, for ray research, we have many data for this area, and now we have to check how the data we can show that physically comes the radioactivity to a deeper level. And when we can show this, we see 13 points on this Earth, not more, 13 points. And we can bring it the radioactivity into the normal way to bring into the water and to feed the plants. Radioactivity is a normal motor for evolution, but it doesn't work so good when it comes to a higher level. And so we have to bring in this. And when we see these results, and these results are okay, then we can bring in this very, very soon into the generation from the plasma working people.
Yes, I think we have to work on our domes quite significantly, because I also feel that what we've been seeing here, because in Australia we have a very, very thin ozone layer and a very big ozone hole. Literally, sometimes in summer, our lettuce, it burns white, There's a hell of a lot of extra radiation coming in.
Yeah.
And it's almost frying things to pieces.
I can show you some pictures in the next time where we make this with human beings to bring in the special fields into the biosphere and the aura, and we can see into 3 minutes that the ionization from different elements, electromagnetic, electric, radioactive, bring into the water and came to integration in the whole biosphere from the people, and all these things are harmonized. I can show you the next time pictures.
That would be great, thanks.
Yes. I noticed this and bring it in 14 days.
Thank you, Klaus did a very interesting description of the combination of the old knowledge of Schaubberger and the plasma, which obviously works very well together.
Yeah.
Informing waters again in a more natural way.
Yeah.
Do you see that also with the generators which we have, the circular motion of the liquids, like the liquid plasma, could be good adding to the tools of Victor? And
yes. When you have running a little bit zinc reactor, the peace reactor, and with a little fan with 3 watts, you have a dome for, I think, I have one and nearly to me. This dome is nearly 40 meters. 40 meters. One little zinc reactor. When we build it up and bring it on the right point on the Earth, then you have a very different interaction with the fields. And that is the kind what I have to present or to learn or to show the people. How can we find these points to become the best interaction between the plasma fields and the environment?
Klaus, so you're using to try and find the right points on the Earth to tap into the Earth's fields as well to magnify your fields?
Yes.
Okay.
This is not only the Earth magnet grid, and they find 7 different grids. We have 9 ground forces points on the Earth, and they have different interaction between. And when we study these points and bring different materials out of these points, we have special interactions in the environment.
Mm.
So we work.
Those balls you're spinning, are they just single core, double core?
It's only a single core.
Single core, okay.
Yes.
And just with a fan?
Yes, a little PC fan. 3 watts.
Fan, yeah.
Yes.
You're lucky you can see the fields. I can't quite see them. Jimmy just sees little bits of sort of misty occasionally, but I can't spot them.
We have to train this muscle. It's no problem. This is not medial thing. I learned this hundreds of people. It's no problem.
Well, you'll have to give us a crash course.
Yes. We make this at first in Austria, and then we have to transcribe this and bring it into an online course. We can make this together. It's no problem.
Absolutely.
Send us the connections. We want to join. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll find that the plasma is going to be connecting a whole lot of this ancient technology that a lot of people have been touching on, and it's going to bring it all together very nicely. All right, any further questions? Otherwise, we can maybe call it a day.
I have one question, one final question to the whole auditorium. As we are, of course, drinking all the waters, and could you imagine, all of you, that if we energize with plasma energy the watersheds where we take the water from, to me it seems very efficient to be in a better state of well-being for the mankind, if we could achieve that.
Yeah, I think what we all have to start doing is as Caroline always suggested, you know, wherever we go, we take our CO2 water, and every water source we go and pour our CO2 water in. But even if you're going to go and walk in your parks, and even in the cities with the trees and that, just start watering everywhere with the CO2, and we're going to slowly change the whole environment that we live in. So if we all do our part, it will all connect up.
And don't forget the zinc.
Okay, Petra says, thank you for this enlightened meeting. And Maria says, yes, Klaus Dieter, we have been waiting since you have been talking to Mr. Keshe. Love your techniques. Please, let's see next time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Klaus.
Thank you also all. Thank you.
Well, I hope you all learned something today. It's just the beginning for agriculture and the nature and connecting back to nature. So thank you all for participating.
Yes, and I hope in the future the proof is in the pudding, and we haven't been totally wrong with all our assumptions, but I don't think so, because when you start understanding things in a plasma way, things just seem to become logical and work pretty well. You don't have to force things into any kind of assumptions or theses. You can just know that it's correct. So yeah, hopefully in the future we'll all learn together, and we can really plot the future of plasma in our gardens. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for helping us, Rick.
You're welcome. And next time will be what, on December 4th, I guess, is next Sunday, right? And
No, it's the second Sunday of each month,
oh,
and then
I'm
the
sorry.
first Sunday. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's not every second week. It's every second and fourth Sunday. Yeah.
Probably be the 11th then of December.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Right.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and be good for people to see that on YouTube as well.
Yes. Well, thanks, Rick, for your help.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll stop the recording now.
Thank you very much. It was great teaching. Thank you for cooperation. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.